بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن استنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The viewers, thanks for joining me. I just wanted to say thank you to all the followers, or the one who have been supporting. Jazakumullahu khairan. This video is the live Q&A, which last week I posted on Facebook. If you have any questions, please send them through. The majority of questions were through inbox. Only had a few on the page. The reason for that, and this is something to mention, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Thanks for joining us, Danitza. Sorry if I said that incorrectly. And Sana, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The reason for that is a lot of people tell me that they are not allowed to follow me. They're not allowed to follow pages similar to mine as well. Usually, the majority of people that tell me this are actually wives, women, females. And they're usually, in very bad situations, so they're not allowed to follow this page and pages like it. So it gives them the opportunity to inbox or email their questions through. And just a little comment on that. I mean, if you're in a relationship where a spouse is isolating you, and that's exactly what it is. It's isolation, isolating you from information, isolating you from knowledge, isolating you from people, from support. The reason why they do this is, to control you, to have you for themselves, and to, remove you away from anything that may, question their treatment towards you. So anyway, just a quick comment on that. A lot of people did send messages, so jazakumullah khairan for that. I'll be going through some questions. I don't know how long this session is going to be. This is not really planned. I'm not in some studio with professionals around me. It's just all with my phone and stuff. So bear with me. I've got the questions here. If you've got any questions that I can that you want to ask, you can ask here, and I'll try my best to attend to them. So the first question was from a sister. This was also private. She says the husband's family is a source of tension for the couple. The husband's personality is that he always stands up for his family, his mother and his brother and his sister, but never stands up for the wife. In fact, he degrades the wife in front of them. Even in private, he defends his family, even though he knows that they backbit his wife. There's resentment brewing. What should the wife do? So these are all loaded questions. What should the wife do? Should the wife let it go? First of all, before we answer, I just want to make it clear. All my posts, anything I say now, it's general information. Okay, it's always it's general knowledge, it's general information. It's not in replacement for professional therapy. This is not therapy right now. This is not counseling. It's just the basic Q&A to help some people answer their questions. So my advice will be general, and I'll consider that. Obviously, I don't have all the information at hand. I don't have the husband's side, and this is this, very basic information that I have. So based on this information, first of all, Islamically, what does Islam say in regards to a husband sticking up or defending his wife? or a wife defending her husband as well. What does Islam say about this? First, we can mention the hadith in Bukhari where the Prophet ﷺ was asked. He was asked, Ya Rasulullah, O Prophet of Allah, who is most beloved to you? Who is the most beloved to you? And with no hesitation, with not even thinking twice about it, he replied, Aisha, his wife Aisha. And then they said, Ya Rasulullah, that's from the women, what about from the men? He said, her father, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. The point I'm trying to make here is the Prophet ﷺ didn't hesitate to show his boys or his companions or his family or anyone who the most beloved to him was. It was his wife. He said it. Now, also what's expected is that when you marry someone, especially when a man marries a woman, is that this girl, this daughter, is a trust from her dad, her family, and that if she was, we expect that she was in a house where she was safe and she wasn't backbitten and she was defended. Now, if she's coming out of that household into your household and she doesn't feel safe, that just goes against the whole principles of marriage and the basic elements of marriage. And it shows that there's no sense of we-ness. There's no team. This is not a relationship. This is actually an indication that it's not a relationship. It's a one-sided ship, whatever you want to call that. Maybe there's other reasons why they're married. Maybe there's some benefits in there. Raising kids, doing the housework. Allahu alam. Because if you can't show we-ness to your family, even if it's your mother or your brothers or anyone, you should defend your wife. If they are backbiting her, if they are slandering her, if they are accusing her, if they are even bringing up things that have half-truths, you stop them where they are, you create a boundary and you tell them to stay behind this boundary. Jazakumullahu khairan. You are not allowed to cross here. You cannot talk about my wife like this. And you must defend your wife. And this is common sense. This is what is expected in couples. And it's also obligatory to defend those who are being slandered, especially your wife. So to answer your question, what should a wife do? If you don't do anything, then it's going to continue. That's the issue there. If you're not going to do anything, then this behavior will continue. So what can you do? Tell him. If you haven't told him already, tell him. Tell him, I don't appreciate you backbiting me to your family. I don't appreciate when your family backbite me. You just stand there and do nothing. And if nothing happens, maybe escalate it. Take it to someone who's in authority. Show him that you're not accepting this type of behavior. So that's question number one. Defend your spouses, dear brothers and sisters. Husbands, defend your wives, and wives, defend your husbands. I can't stress this enough. If people on the outside see that husband and wife are not one team, then they'll run amok on you. That's where people can play games on you. They can cause fitna. You need to show the world that you are a partnership and a team. And anyone that backbites your spouse, you need to defend your ard. You need to defend their honor. Hope that helps. Don't just leave it. Do something about it. Escalate it. Take it to a sheikh. Ask him to speak to him first and foremost. Tell him that you're not accepting this. And I believe there's deeper issues than this, but this is the basic information that I have. Wallahu a'lam. Question number 2. Hi Muhammad, in response to your post, I have a question. My husband is currently going through bad depression. He's seeing a psychiatrist and he's on medication. We are having a lot of problems at the moment. He kicks me out a lot, kicks me out of the house a lot. My question is, do you think it's the depression making him do this, or is it a trait of someone with narcissism? So before I answer that as well, may Allah make it easy for you. By the way, a lot of the questions I get are from sisters. I only got 2 from brothers, and the overall majority are from sisters. So this question here, my husband, you're saying that your husband is depressed, severely depressed. He's on medication. He sees a psychiatrist. He always kicks you out of the home. Is it depression or is it narcissism? I would like to reverse that and say, who cares what the label is? If you're feeling hurt and pain, right? If you're feeling hurt and pain and the behavior is not right, then it doesn't matter about the label, whether it's depression, whether it's narcissism. So if I tell you it's narcissism, what would that change for you? Would that mean that you stay, you'd leave? If it's depression, what would that mean? Look at, beyond the label, beyond the diagnosis, and look at the behavior. If the behavior is affecting you and you're not happy with it, that's what you need to focus on. Because if you're going to look at the diagnosis and the labels, it can go either way. Either as an excuse, my husband can do this to me because this is his excuse. He's got the get out of jail free card. Or, the other extreme would be, not putting up with anything, with any conflict, So don't worry about, my advice is don't worry about the label. Look beyond the label. If this behavior is hurtful to you, if it's harming you, if it's something that it's causing you pain, then that's what you need to look at and that's what you need to act upon. So I hope that helps. Oh, sorry, just a comment as well. Is it the depression? Depression generally makes, and I'm speaking generally again, this is not absolute. Generally, depression would make you, would make the person isolate, refrain from doing things that they used to do, refrain from doing things that they used to enjoy, low mood, laziness, sort of dragging their feet just to do the basic necessities. So people, like this, don't have the ability to be kicking people out and, raging and things like this. It doesn't sound like, it could be a factor. Depression can be a factor. I'm not outruling that. However, it doesn't sound like the classical traits of depression. Okay? Usually people that are depressed would like someone to support them and to be there for them and to give them some attention. Unless you're the source of unless you're the source of his depression. Allah. That was just a joke. So yeah, this is basically the thing with depression, is that usually the person who has depression would like people around them, but however it can be a factor. Is it narcissism? Allahu alam. Not everyone who gets angry is a narcissist. Just got to read this question here by Ziyad Hafdah. Naam, akhi. Thanks for your comment, my brother. It means a lot. I'll get through the other comments soon, inshallah. I don't have an admin team here. So yeah, is it narcissism? Allahu alam. Not everyone who gets angry and rages it is automatically a narcissist. So I hope that answers your question. Question number 3. Hello. My question is, can someone who is narcissistic really change? So they're all about narcissism. I think it's like the new word these days, narcissist. And it's like a swear word. You bloody narcissist, So it's become a very famous word now. However, it is, it's a real clinical, it's a real mental health disorder. It's a personality disorder. Yeah, it should be taken seriously. Now, can someone who is narcissistic really change? Let's look at the two, parts here. So, people with personality disorder, the narcissistic personality disorder, people who have this, they are mentally ill. It's an illness, it's a disorder. No one can diagnose anyone with that except for someone who is trained in that field, right? Just like a doctor, or in any other field, no one can diagnose unless it's their profession. And so there's a difference between narcissistic personality disorder and narcissism. Now, narcissism is like traits, okay? In and of itself, narcissism has some good and has some positive, traits to it. There's some positive in it, and there's some negative in it as well. So, an example: positive narcissism, if you want to call it that, is someone who feels overall good about themselves. They're happy in their own skin. Okay, they have good self-esteem. They carry themselves with respect. They're not passive. They're very assertive. So these are good traits of narcissism if you want to look at it in that aspect. Now, the negative traits of narcissism, as the diagnostic manual points out, okay, it says that you have to have 5 of the following 9 behaviors. I'll read them out to you. So, it has a grandiose sense of self-esteem. Example: exaggerates achievements and talents. So they exaggerate achievements and talents, and they expect to be recognized as superior without the real achievement behind it. So grandiosity. Okay, they feel grandiose, self of importance, and they exaggerate their achievements. So you hear them bragging about how successful they are, how great they are, and they expect the people to recognize that. So I'll give you an example. I'll give you a real example that I see that, and this is not attacking anyone, right? But you see someone who studied 4 years Islam, he studied Sharia 4 years, or 5 years, or 3 years, or wherever it is, and he comes back to his hometown and he's a sheikh. There's a title here, sheikh, right? Or imam, or mufti, or whatever. If you don't address him with that, he'll get visibly upset. Like, how dare you not address me with my title, So this is a sign of narcissism. This is a sign of grandiosity, okay? A sense of self-importance. That's the first item in the diagnostic manual. The second one is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, beauty, brilliance, and ideal love. So fantasies of success. They're always fantasizing of, how to be great. Fantasizing of how to show the community how great I am and all the hard work that I do. Or fantasizing of how I can show my wife or my husband, how important I am in the eyes of the people. Therefore, you should also respect me as such. So they're preoccupied with these fantasies. Okay. The third item is believes that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by a special few of high status people. So in other words, they look down on people. Arrogance. Okay, a lot of arrogance. Only a few people will understand them. Only a few selected, smart people will understand them, and everyone else is like beneath them and rubbish, and they don't have time for them, type of thing. This is a sign or a trait of narcissism. The next item is requires excessive admiration. You see them, they require excessive admiration and praise. They they probe questions in that so that you can praise them. They sort of corner you in their conversation so that you can say, well done, you did great, or what you did here was good, or whatever. So they admire, or they require excess admiration. We all like to be admired. See, this is the positive part of narcissism. We all like to be recognized a little bit, appreciated. This is okay, but it's an excess, okay? And they require it. It's a need. It's an actual need. Without it, they feel incomplete. And this is why they jump from sex partner to sex partner to sex partner to sex partner. This is why they cheat. A lot of them, cheating is associated with narcissism sometimes. Not all the time, sometimes. And this is one of the reasons why, because they want to be admired. They want to be, their partners to praise them. When that gets boring, they move on. Basically, that's one trait there. The next one has a sense of entitlement, i.e., unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance with his or her expectations. Okay, so they have a sense of entitlement. They feel entitled. Okay, they all link together. It sounds like the second trait, the second sign. So the sense of entitlement is, they will get upset. For example, if there's like a vote who's going to be a leader or who's going to, do certain things, they will feel entitled that they should be the ones recognized. And they also have a sense of entitlement in relationships, that their partners must serve them. Okay, their partners must serve them because they are entitled. Not because of their good treatment towards them was reciprocated. No, it's just because by default they are entitled. They feel entitled, and they don't thank the spouse for doing basic things like, whether it's things like making lunch, making dinner, going to work, picking up the kids, anything like that. They don't say thank you and show a culture of appreciation for these things because they believe I am entitled for this treatment. That goes back to the grandiosity as well. They feel that they're up there and that they're important. The next, where are we? The next one is interpersonally exploitative, meaning takes advantage of others to achieve his or her own ends. Very exploitative. They exploit others. Okay, so they manipulate, they trick people in order just to, to win the game, or to get what they want, pretty much. Okay, so even in relationships outside of husband and wife, even within friends or at work or whatever, in any interpersonal relationship, they are very exploitative. And the next trait, the next item is a big one. It's a dead giveaway. Lacks empathy. What is empathy? This needs a whole video on its own, but pretty much they are unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others. They are unwilling to recognize the feelings and the needs of others. They can't catch feelings, okay? They can't catch feelings or needs because, let's go back a little bit. This stems from pretty much childhood trauma, neglect, growing up in a household where their needs weren't met. Their needs weren't met by their parents. Their parents were emotionally immature. There must have been some domestic violence, or there was just no emotional connection. There was just no emotional connection. So there's some wounds there, okay? And as children, we are in what we call the egocentric stage. The egocentric stage. This is where pretty much life is all about you. You see the world as a child, 2 to 3 year old, right? You see the world as an extension of yourself, meaning the whole world should serve you. And if you look at our children, that's how they are. And that's normal, that's fine. That's how children are. We don't expect children to have empathy at the age of 2. Okay, to understand its mother's feelings or its father's feelings. And this is a side note as well. That's why it's stupid for parents, when the child is misbehaving, the parent believes or says things like, why do you make me angry? Why do you make me upset? The child doesn't have the ability to know or even care about how you feel. It's all about them at that age. Anyway, so at this age, if your parents are emotionally immature and they didn't allow you to be angry, for example, they didn't allow you to be scared, they didn't allow you to be upset, they'll keep on saying things like, why are you angry for? Man up, or don't be stupid, there's nothing to be scared about. This child was shown that you weren't allowed to show emotion. Therefore, I'll give you one other example, right? Imagine a child holding a cat from its neck here, not from the back here, from its neck, and it's choking it. But the child doesn't know that it's choking the cat. His thing is just holding the cat, it's a nice cat. If you leave this child to carry the cat from its neck, blocking its airway, the cat will die, correct? Now, when the cat dies, the child will be like shocked, will be like, why isn't it moving? Like, why is it dead? It won't take responsibility and it won't understand what just happened. Okay? When this child with emotionally immature parents who weren't connected to the child, didn't allow the child to express themselves and didn't learn about feelings and was neglected, this child will grow up with an emotional wound, okay, and will be stuck, according to lots of research and studies and the professionals in this field. The adult will be stuck in the egocentric stage, that child carrying around a cat. But this time, this adult, is not carrying around cats. It's carrying around other human beings. You with me? They can't catch feelings, right? So, just like that, right? In that, understanding this background, that they are stuck in the egocentric stage, this is why they lack empathy. Okay? You can't just click your fingers and say, I have empathy, right? Empathy is something that is learned behavior. And, as a child, if you didn't see your parents have empathy, have compassion towards each other, then you will grow up being the same, more than likely. So that's the item, lacks empathy, okay? And this next item is often envious of others or believes that others are envious of him or her. I think this is everyone on Facebook. No, I'm just joking. Everyone's jealous of them. Or they are jealous of others. Okay? And they believe that everyone is jealous of them. You see people who believe that any bad thing that happens to them, it's the evil eye, because I am worthy of being envied. Sorry, I am worthy of being envied. The whole world is envying me, and this car accident that I had, or this trip over that I did in a pothole and broke my ankle, is because people envy me. I'm not saying everyone who does this is a narcissist, but this is a little trait that we should be careful of. All right, all these traits we should be careful of in general. Okay, they're not even praiseworthy in Islam. These traits are not even praiseworthy in Islam. Okay, the last number 9, the last item in the diagnostic manual shows arrogant, haughty behaviors and attitudes. So they're very arrogant, very haughty, high level of being self-centered, and you can see how they're all connected, all these traits here. So the diagnostic manual says if you have 5 of these 9, then the professional will or can diagnose you with NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. It's a disorder. Okay, Now, you can't take what I just said now and go and diagnose your husband or your wife. Okay? You can't do that. You're not a professional, and there's a lot of items to look into, a lot of things that they do to get to that point. They don't just read this out and that's it. Each question has sub-questions, and each question they go through assessments and checkups. So you can't do that, all right? Just wanted to mention that. But these are traits of narcissism. Now, to go back to the question, can people who are narcissistic really change? So if you have a narcissistic trait and not NPD, yes, you can change. Just like any other bad behavior that you have, you can change it. If it's something that's a bad behavior, something that's haram, or something that's addictive, or whatever, you can change that. But there's some steps to that. What's the first step for change? To be able, or to have the ability to self-reflect. You need to be able to self-reflect, and then acknowledge that this is wrong. Or this is not helpful for me, right? And taking responsibility for it, and then change can occur. You don't just wake up one day and, I am healed, or I've changed and that's it. No, it's a big process. So if you have narcissistic traits, yes, you can change that. Now, can someone with NPD change? That's a question there for debate amongst the scholars of in this area. What I tend to lean towards, I'm not a scholar in this field, I'm just telling you what I've learned and whatnot, is that the word change, it's a big word, right? Anyone or everyone has a chance, or there is a chance for everyone to change, especially by the will of Allah. As Muslims, we believe, in somewhat miracles, that Allah can do anything. Now, on a practical level, the data shows that it's very, very, very rare. It's very rare that narcissists, who are clinically diagnosed, do change. Can they change? They probably could. Have they changed? Is there data and records to say that they have changed? Very, 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 very small amount. Very rare. You can almost say no. Okay. That's the question number 3. Can someone with narcissistic traits really change? I hope that helps. And goes back to what I said to the other questioner. Why are you asking this question? If your spouse is hurting you, if your spouse is harming you, if you're feeling pain in your relationship, don't look for a diagnosis. Don't look for a label. Look at the behavior and deal with it. Deal with the behavior and see what you want to do with it. Don't just look for a label, okay? Because a lot of people ask me this. I get this every single day. Can narcissists change? Can narcissists change? Well, if I say yes, then is that going to keep you in an abusive relationship? And if I say no, what are you going to do about it? You know what I mean? So look at the behavior anyway, regardless. So that was question 3. Question 4. Salam. Any advice for identifying core beliefs? That's a good question. Yes, core beliefs, for those who don't know, core beliefs are beliefs. They could be negative core beliefs or positive core beliefs. One second. The beliefs that we carry around that create rules and assumptions for us. Now, we don't actually think them all the time, but our actions point to the fact that we have these thoughts. For example, someone who has a negative core belief that they are stupid. Okay, they don't say I am stupid. I mean, they might say I am stupid, but they don't actually say that. So how would they act this out by, for example, they have a rule. For example, I won't perform, or I won't do this in front of certain people, because then I would know I am stupid. So therefore, I'd make excuses to avoid that. that is the behavior of someone with a negative core belief. So the question is asking, how can I identify my core beliefs? One way is by journaling. Whenever something triggers you, whenever you feel angry or sad or anything that sparks any emotions, negative emotions, then journal that. Write where you were, what happened in the lead up to it, what self-talk did you have during it, and how it made you feel. Okay. After doing this, after weeks and weeks and weeks, you'll probably see like a pattern. You start to see a pattern, and then you can see what your negative core beliefs are. Also, there's some CBT thought diaries that you can get. They have the questions there. You just fill them out whenever you feel overwhelmed or what have you, and that's how you can identify your core beliefs. The next question is, how to deal, after just read through the mistakes, how to deal with a narcissistic mother Islamically that expects the world but offers nothing in return except criticism and ungrateful comments and abuse. Is it permissible for one's mental health to keep a distance? Okay, very sensitive topic, very sensitive question. We know first and foremost in Islam, the parents are of utmost importance. Okay, being dutiful and caring and loving to your parents is a big act of worship, and the obedience to them is also important. Now, like everything else, there's conditions to things. Okay, so we know obedience to Allah is unconditional as Muslims. Obedience to His Prophet, unconditional as Muslims. Obedience to anyone lesser than that has conditions. Now, that doesn't mean that we go about doing things and being rude and disrespectful. I just want to mention this important point first. If Allah says in the Quran, if your parents are disbelievers and they make jihad against you, meaning that they try to force you to disobey Allah, Allah says, فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا. If they force you and they encourage and they fight and they work against you to disobey Allah, Allah says, do not obey them. But then He says, befriend them in this world or treat them in this world in a good manner. In other words, reject what they're saying, disobey them, okay, but with respect, not to become abusive and not to become someone who's just going to cut them off immediately. He said, وَصَاحِبْهُمَا. Sahib means, it comes from the word sihbah, which is like a friend. He's saying, disobey them, but still be around them, still see what they need, but have boundaries, so to speak. That's in a situation where they're not narcissistic, they're just telling you, leave Islam, for example. Okay, which is a huge sin. If someone's telling you, leave Islam, drink wine, drink alcohol, go do zina, that's bad. Being around that's huge. But Allah says if they do that, if they do jihad, so you can do shirk, which is the biggest sin, the major sin, the biggest sin of all. He says, do not obey them, but treat them, be around with them in a nice manner, but with boundaries. Okay, with boundaries. So that's the first couple of points I want to establish. Now, if they are narcissistic, and believe me, I have dealt with people who I believe are narcissists, including narcissistic mothers. Okay, they are the worst to be around. May Allah make it easy for every son-in-law, daughter-in-law, whoever the case may be, who is around a narcissistic mother. Okay, very, very problematic. Allahu Akbar. What can you do? Now, if you're married, if the question doesn't say if they're married, if you're married and you're with your husband, then keep boundaries but don't cut ties, right? If there's no clear-cut reason to do that, if it's just ungratefulness, as you said, and things like this, keep some boundaries, treat them nice, check in with them from time to time. Don't expect them to learn from your boundaries. As we said before, if you were listening, they don't catch feelings, okay? They don't care about how you feel. They don't care. You can protest day and night by saying, well, I'm not gonna visit her for a week or two. She's not gonna learn her lesson, okay? So just take the advice of Allah and keep boundaries. You be the judge of what sort of boundaries, but still treat them well. Let me just read this question or comment from the Sheikh Nabil. If one knows someone who is psychologically abusive to his wife, what is the best way to confront him? I have a feeling he would blame his wife for speaking out against him, which might cause a big issue. I was going to ask you the same question, Sheikh. Let me answer that at the end, inshallah, if I have time. Please forgive me, Sheikh. I'll get back to that, okay? So, the questioner is saying, can she keep a distance from her narcissistic mother? Yes, you can. You be the judge of that. However, the only time, we fully cut someone off is in rare cases, let that be judged by the sheikh or a sheikh or a panel of mashayikh before you do such a major thing, okay? If there's things like, for example, I've seen cases where fathers are sexually abusing their daughters. Yes, I hear all this stuff. Physically abusing them to the extent that they're breaking bones and breaking noses, and and there's absolutely nothing in their situation that shows that the father or the mother has the best interest of the child. Here, with the guidance of a sheikh or someone professional, you can cut them off. Allahu Alam. I've read many fatwa where a child was sexually harassed, or even raped by her father, and the sheikh said, you cut him off, he's not your wali anymore, okay? Because he's not fit enough to be your protector. When the one who's meant to be protecting you is harming you, is where you lose that title. Where are we? The next question is, I would like you to discuss how does a husband respond to a mother whom does not like to be left alone in the home. She's of old age. Should the husband and wife go out? To the point that the mother, after a while, starts shouting random things in different languages that doesn't make sense, and people think that she has a mental problem. All right. So there's an elderly mother. Whenever husband and wife leave the home, she would cause a scene, and people would think, so much so that people would think that she's mentally ill because she's speaking other languages. My advice to that, or the answer to that, would be, old people are like young people, or like us all, even at this age. But at our ages, in between young and old, we're good at sort of fulfilling our own needs. Now, a child has two main needs, right? They are attention and some form of autonomy or control. We all have this, actually, right? It's like we're carrying around two buckets. We have two buckets that need to be filled in order for us to be happy, content. The first bucket is control. We need to have the ability to make our own choices, okay? This is linked to free will. And the other bucket is attention, affection, love from those around us. So old people, when they get old, they become very fragile, very needy, so to speak. Their buckets become like leaky, meaning that you need to always fill their buckets the bucket of control and the bucket of attention and affection. So this may be an indication that the son, Allahu Alam, maybe not filling his mum's buckets up enough, meaning he's not taking care of her, or he's not spending enough time with her emotionally, or what have you. It's just an indication that he probably needs to give her a bit more attention. He needs to be patient with her. We need to all be patient with our elderly parents, with our parents in general. Allah Azza wa Jal does say, رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا. It's a dua that's mentioned in the Quran. Oh Allah, have mercy on my parents, just like they had mercy, or just like they raised me when I was young. See, when we were young, they didn't say, well, I'm going to create a boundary here and not change your nappy. We couldn't move if it wasn't for them. So when they're old and they need the same treatment, remember that, okay? Remember that you need to be there for them extra, okay? Hope that helps. Next question is, why do young people, male and female, do drugs? That's a good question. The question continues. They don't eat pork or drink alcohol, but they are addicted to drugs. Why are drugs considered halal? This is all one question, right? And if your partner is doing drugs and he's becoming violent and abusive, what can you do to protect yourself and your children? It's a loaded question again. Why do people do drugs, male or female? It's an addiction, okay? Why won't they eat pork and drink alcohol? Or they probably would drink alcohol, but I've seen people who won't eat pork, but they'll do any drug under the sun. It's because pork is not an addiction, unless you got an eating disorder. Pork generally is not an addiction, right? It doesn't numb feelings or pain, Why people become addicted, drugs, especially alcoholism, it's a mask. They're trying to numb some trauma, okay? They're trying to numb some trauma, usually traced back from childhood, where there was probably abuse, neglect, and so on and so forth. So this is a reason why people do drugs. There's many others, like peer pressure, wanting to fit in, and so forth. But this is one reason why Muslims, I'm guessing the question is asking about Muslims, why do Muslims do drugs but they won't eat pork? I hope that answers your question. Drugs is something that numbs the trauma. Drugs is not the gateway. The gateway is trauma. The gateway is emotionally immature parents. The gateway is abuse. Let that sink in. Why are drugs considered halal? They're not. If anyone believes that they're halal, tell them it's not. Maybe, let's start on this point. Some people believe some drugs are halal. I have come across some weird shit, excuse my language, right? Where you can sell drugs, as long as you sell it to disbelievers and all this rubbish. I don't know. I don't know if I want to get into that, but let's leave that aside for now. That's another story for another day. If your partner is doing drugs and is very violent and abusive, what do you do to protect yourself? Go and seek professional help safely. They'll help you create a safety plan. They'll evaluate your situation to see if you need to get out or if you can get out. They'll try to help you in that regard. I know it's not easy. This is general advice once again. I know there are some people, women especially, when they're in DV, if they escape the statistics show that they are killed more times when they leave the relationship more than when they are in the relationship. Does that make sense? So you need to be careful. Okay, I'm not trying to scare you. I'm not trying to say you will be killed if you leave. These are cases that happen, but seek professional help. because it's not easy to leave. I know a lot of people might say to you, just leave, what are you doing? Just pack up your stuff, I can't believe you haven't left yet. We understand, and I want to say I understand it is hard, and for those people who give that unsolicited advice, don't, okay, because you could be the reason for major problems later on, okay. What you can do to support someone is tell them that you're there for them if they want to talk, help them be safe, and so on and so forth. I hope that answers your question. That's a loaded question there. It's general advice once again. The next question is, how do we distinguish between someone that may just have a narcissistic behavior trait from pathological narcissism? Okay, I think I've answered that. Pathological narcissism, like I said, we don't go around diagnosing people, okay. That's for the specialists, that's for the mental health experts. But how to distinguish goes back to what I've been saying to the other questioners. Don't look at the label, look at the behavior that's affecting you. If it's unhelpful, if it's bad, if it's hurting you, act upon the behavior and make your decision based on that, okay? Not based on whether he or she is a narcissist, Once again, if I say, this is narcissism, this is NPD, this is not NPD, would that mean that you would stay in a relationship that you're feeling pain in? So let's not look at labels. Jazakumullahu khairan. Next question is, why? How long have we been on? Why is there such a rise in men? Why is there such a rise in men unable to handle the pressures and responsibilities of marriage and children? Why do so many men turn their backs on their children after divorce, leaving the kids to the mothers to raise and provide alone? There's many factors. Allahu alam. I know this question is speaking from her perspective. This happens also to fathers as well. Okay, it could be many reasons. Parental alienation happens where one parent detaches or disappears or completely dissolves themselves from parenthood in order to teach the other parent a lesson. If I didn't have it my way, then stuff you and stuff the kids. They believe that by leaving the kids to them, it's a punishment to the parent. This is life without me. Whereas with parental alienation is where one parent would remove the children away from the other parent for various reasons. Okay, so it could be either way. Allahu alam. Why do people do this? My advice is stop using the children as weapons. Okay, they need mum and dad in their life, and you can be a broken home even in the absence of divorce. I repeat, you can have a broken home even in the absence of divorce, and you can have a sound home even if there is divorce. So Allah Azza wa Jal does tell us to live together bil ma'ruf aw sarihuhun bi ihsan. He says live together in good, in ma'ruf, in honor. Or if that is not achievable, or living together is harmful, he says, then depart bi ihsan, in a respectable manner as well. So children shouldn't be used as weapons against the other parent. You're only harming the child, okay? So why do they do it? Allahu alam. It's like saying, why are people idiots? I don't know. Another question is, I can't do this. I don't know how people talk for hours. I'm tired. There's a few more questions about parenting. So, parenting. How my child doesn't listen. Every time I set a punishment, my child disobeys. All right. So that's the problem there. The word punishment, right? Punishment is pretty much trying to instill fear in your child. Okay, you want to punish your child. So even if they conform, it's only temporary, where they'll behave only in front of you. Okay. Once you are out of sight, they'll misbehave again. So the word punishment is a wrong word. I like to use the word, consequences. Okay, consequences. Or discipline. See, discipline comes from the word disciple. So you can discipline your children. Okay. It comes from the word disciple. Disciple is someone who has a teacher-student relationship, and you show them consequences and you discipline them, you teach them in order that they may become better. Whereas punishment is stopping the bad behavior, however, not allowing the child to be better. Okay? It actually makes them worse. Has low self-esteem, depression, and so on and so forth. So, about parenting, before I go into that, I hope that helps. There's 4 types of parenting styles. Okay, the first one is authoritative parenting. Authoritative parenting, these parents, they make sure that their children follow through on what is expected in a loving way. The focus of a authoritative parent is on positive reinforcement, okay, and good behavior. Discipline is more of a teaching opportunity. It's not about punishing the child and hurting them and putting them down. Okay, it's to teach the child to understand that their behavior was not desirable, and are different, better, desirable traits. The outcome of a child who has a parent that's authoritative, okay, that's empathic, that has empathy, okay, that had an emotional connection with the child. The outcome of the child would be emotional stability, would know how to solve problems. Okay, in adulthood, they'll know how to solve problems. Not much outbursts of anger. Okay, they can regulate their emotions. They'll have good social skills. Okay, socially competent. They'll have less problem behavior, like drugs, alcohol, addictive personalities. They won't have any of that. So that's how, this is the first style of parenting, which is called authoritative parenting. It's pretty much a emotionally mature parent, okay, who focuses on discipline rather than punishment. The next style of parenting is authoritarian parenting. And I'm Lebanese, so I can say this, but this is where all the Lebs fall into, all right? And even Pakistanis and Desis and, a lot of us, all right? A lot of us fall into this category. It's called authoritarian. Authoritarian parents tend to exert a great deal of control over their children. And they don't explain rules in advance. They don't have empathy towards their children. They set high standards, and if they don't reach that standard, they are doomed. The child is doomed. He's scared. He's anxious. And even if he reaches high status or high marks or high results from this, this standard that the parents set, it's still not good enough. You got 98, you should have got 99. You should have got 100. You came second, not good enough. Nothing that the child can do where the parent says, or where the parent sort of praises the behavior. Okay? They don't do that. They always say, well, okay, that was okay, but had you listened to me before, you would have done better. It's always trying to put that child down. This is called authoritarian parenting. This is an absolute disaster. Okay? This is where all the traits of narcissism comes from, to be honest and frank. I want to say it live, spread the word. Why does everyone have narcissistic traits? This is a big reason why. Okay, parenting, authoritarian, abusive, controlling parenting. They focus on punishment, all right, rather than positive reinforcement. The outcomes of a child who is with an emotionally immature parent who is an authoritarian, okay, is usually, okay, low self-esteem, depression, drugs, alcohol, bad decisions, poor social skills, and may even have bad, education or academic achievements. Okay, and then they will grow up also sort of repeating this cycle. Okay, where not all the time, sometimes, where they'll lack empathy. They'll have some impulsive behaviors that stems from this. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3, the parenting style is permissive parenting, where the permissive parent allow the children to do whatever they want. There's no punishment. There's no actual abuse all the time. There is abuse sometimes, but the children have free reign, control. Yalla ruhu, do whatever you want. The parent is probably always on the phone, on WhatsApp, watching movies, in their own world, doing their own thing, maybe getting babysitters while they live in lavish, going out, acting as if they've got no children. I'm not saying that you can't go out, you can, but I'm speaking in general. Just in case, I always got to make disclaimers, So they pretty much neglect the child, but they are there. They are physically there, but not like emotionally there. Okay. So what happens here? There's no boundaries. There's no rules. Things are haphazard, right? The child might get smacked out of nowhere, doesn't really know what's going on, just because the child was an inconvenience to the parent. You're annoying me. I'm trying to send this message here, and then they'll smack the child because they're being annoying, right? This is pretty much a permissive parenting style. The outcomes of this is similar to the other one: poor self-control, poor self-esteem, symptoms of depression, anxiety, not feeling good enough, putting themselves down, less well in school, and will more than likely have problem behavior when they grow up. They won't know how to sort of regulate, for example, their emotions, or if someone offers them a drug, they won't, there's more of a possibility that they would say yes. Okay. The last one is uninvolved parenting. This is the worst of the worst. Uninvolved parents are self-absorbed, they're narcissistic, they're detached from the child, they're uninterested in the child. This is where probably children who had parents that were just detached, completely. They reject and often neglect their children and the role of parenting. Okay, there's no warmth, there's no rules, there's no nothing at all. The parent comes and goes, and there's no real, they're just uninvolved. They're not involved at all. This one, the outcome has the worst. Has a lot of mental illnesses, like depression, anxiety, low self-esteem again. Might have trauma as well. Would have antisocial behavior, addiction. Would not know how to regulate or deal with issues. So anger management issues. So they're the 4 types of parenting styles. Which one do you fit in? So when we say, what can I do with my child? Then they're not listening. I punish them and punish them and punish them, and they don't listen. Which parenting style are you? That's a good question to ask yourself. I'll give you a tip, a parenting tip. What to do to teach consequences with your child. Okay, this is called the 5 R's of consequences. The 5 R's of consequences. So these 5 R's are pretty much to avoid what they call blame, shame, and pain. blame, shame, and pain. Blaming the child, okay, harsh startups, criticism, so forth, put downs. Blame, shaming the child, okay, you're not good enough, you'll never equate to anything, why do I waste my time on you? And pain, physical pain by smacking them, or emotional pain by emotionally neglecting them. So these 5 R's is in opposed to that. So the first R is to, when your child, if you want to discipline them, is to be respectful to them. When you bring up the rule, you bring up their misbehavior as well in a respectful manner. Make sure you're calm before you approach them. Self-soothe, if something happens, give it 10-15 minutes, and then you can address them by saying, see what happened before, I'm just a bit concerned. This is how you bring that up to them in a respectful manner. Do not blame, shame, or pain them. The next R is that the consequence should be related to the misbehavior. And this is where a lot of parents get it wrong. So for example, child misbehaves, parent bans them from going to see their friends for 2 weeks, for example. The two are not related. So this doesn't enforce positive behavior. What you need to do is make them related. The misbehavior related to the consequence. So for example, if your child doesn't wear a helmet while riding a bike, then they lose the bike privilege because the helmet is related to the bike. If the child doesn't brush their teeth before going to bed every day, then the consequence should be related, so they lose their dessert privileges, their sweets and junk food privileges. So no more junk food at all because you refuse to brush your teeth. For the older children, for example, curfew, right? A related consequence would be if they don't follow their curfew, then you can tell them, then you won't be going out for the next week or two because you don't follow the curfew rules. Okay, so it has to be related. And what this does is it gives them the power. You remember that bucket thing that I mentioned before? Attention and power. It gives them the power or the ability to make choices. So if I choose to disobey this rule, this is the consequence. That's power as well. You're giving them the power, the option. Anyway, the third R is to be reasonable in the duration. Another mistake parents do is the child misbehaves and the duration of the consequences is too long. It's just wrong. What happens here is the child then loses hope. Okay, so for example, they're playing games and they're not listening. For example, you don't take away the PlayStation for a whole month, right? You do it for the day. You lost your privilege for today because you didn't follow the rules. Okay. The next one is to let them know. The next R is what they call revealed in advance, right? So you reveal in advance the rules and the consequence. You don't leave it haphazardly. You don't leave it for the moment, for when the storm comes. You don't do that. You teach them this in advance. You tell them the rule and you tell them the consequence in advance. So if the child makes the choice, they know why. They're informed. Okay. And the last R is you get the child to reflect back or repeat back what the rule is. Okay. So you say stuff like, can you repeat back to me what the rule is and what the consequences are? So these are the 5 R's. It helps with children. It's a very famous intervention. It's called the 5 R's of consequences. You can look it up online. It really works. It helps. Now, it might not work for everyone. Like, for example, if you're trying to get the child to reflect back why they can't play on an iPad, and they don't have, and they're not doing it, they're refusing to do it, then it could be an indication that they're not mature enough to even have an iPad. You see what I'm saying? So you might have to take away that privilege until they become mature enough. A lot of us give our children privileges, gaming privileges, way too premature, way too early. So if they're not even able to comprehend rules and regulations and consequences, that's an indication that you should take that away from them, and they're not even mature enough to comprehend, to have that iPad. So that's all the questions that I have. Let me try answering some here. A lot of questions. Alright, just got to bring the camera closer. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. How can we ask questions here? Let's talk about toxic friendships. Thank you everyone for joining me. I'm still reading, but I'm just trying to talk while I'm doing it. I really appreciate all the support, everyone. Jazakumullah khairan. I hope you find my page beneficial. Remember, it's general advice. You can't go diagnosing people, stuff like that. I had one guy actually say, my wife's a narcissist because I read your post about the narcissistic wife, and he khalas, his wife was a narcissist after that. Okay. Jazakallah khairan for your time and effort. Wa iyakum. Yeah, back to the diagnosing. Don't worry about diagnosing people or yourself, alright? Focus on the behavior, not the label. There's no point in pointing fingers like that. Would you agree with the following statement in regards to people with disorders? Genes play a role in the development of personality disorders. Abuse or instability during childhood may also increase the risk. Yeah, genes plays a role. Genes, so hereditary, learned behavior, all that type of stuff together plays a role. Sheikh Nabil, I'm struggling to answer that question, how to approach someone who is physically abusive to his wife in the best way. That's a tough one, Sheikh. That's a tough one. Maybe apply some nasiha, I'm not sure exactly of the details, who he is. But if you can approach him and he won't make the situation worse, as the principle in Islam goes, then approach in a very gentle manner. If it's going to make the situation worse, you believe, then do not approach. Allahu Alam. Sorry, Sheikh, I don't know how to answer that. What about if you have a narcissistic mother who tries to force your kids to become mushrikeen and also sexually and physically and mentally abusive and is a danger to their life? Can you cut ties between them? Yeah, I answered that. There's times where you can. Wa alaikum assalam, Iman Saima. May Allah reward you. Wa yakum. Ayla, mine. You can be a broken home. Oh, you're just repeating what I said. Thank you. Oops. I don't know what I did here. Sorry about that. Alright, I'm going to end it here. Jazakumullah khairan. I'm tired. I don't know how people talk for 2 hours and stuff like that. Alhamdulillah, I hope you found it beneficial. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.